Hey everyone, for Wednesday, April 28th, 2021, welcome to episode 62 of the Ginger and the Beard podcast. I'm AJ, aka The Ginger.
And I'm Reese, aka The Beard. And on this week's show, we're going to take a deep dive into the world of yeast, learning from the experts themselves, as we are joined by Jasper and Ben from Jasper Yeast. How's it going, guys?
Good, how are you?
Very good, very good. Glad to be here. You know, it's looking forward to having some yeasty talk, I guess.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for joining us, guys. There's so much we want to learn while chatting with you guys, and I just kind of want to jump right in. So can you guys give us a super high-level description of who Jasper Yeast is and what you guys do?
So we're a small yeast company providing yeast strains, high-quality yeast strains for the alcohol beverage industry. So mainly breweries, but also cideries, wineries, other alcohol manufacturing companies.
Yeah, now seltzer.
Seltzer
popular,
too.
Yeah.
So everything, we'll go from very small, so from like 15.5 gallons to all the way to 120 barrels, which is a very large volume. So yeah, that's who we are. We offer all these strains like fresh, ready to go, living organisms. So it's very perishable, and it does specific things. So that's who we are in a nutshell.
Awesome. And so you guys you're in Northern Virginia, right? Not far from the Beard himself.
That's correct.
You guys are in Ashburn, right?
Sterling.
Sterling, right.
Yeah,
right,
just
right.
rock throw away. So
I'm in Leesburg. Yeah, pretty sure I've driven past you down 7.
Oh, right on. Yeah, we're right next door to Ocelot, if you know them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys are in the same warehouse lot over.
Yep,
over
literally right next door.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
Do you have any favorite breweries in Leesburg? Or you could say all of them. Since you're
pretty
there.
much. I'm like in walking distance from like 7 different breweries because I'm 5 minutes from downtown Leesburg.
Okay.
Yeah, Black Walnut. I feel like they do a pretty good job if you guys have been out there. My wife and I personally like going out to Dirt Farm just for the view.
Nice.
They have some good ones. They've done a couple barley wines, which are fan favorites of mine.
Their tart cherry is good too.
Yeah, lighter, a lot easier to go. Yeah, I like that one. Bear Chase is another one. Again, I feel like their beer's not as good, but again, it's the atmosphere that really brings me out to that one. So I think atmosphere brings a lot to the table.
Yeah.
There's a couple other ones that I'm probably forgetting right now, but yeah,
There's so many,
Yeah.
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Adroit Theory, which is got a branch out here. Love that place. Their dark beer is just take me home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'll have to take me home after one.
Oh yeah.
After one.
Yeah. That's funny.
Yeah.
Awesome.
How about you guys?
You go ahead.
Me go ahead. Well, I mean, like I like Dynasty. I mean, it's also because I like Fabio. We used to work together, and I like his beers. So, but that's kind of also like a personal link right there. I think Black Hoof makes very good lagers. It's very well known. Gosh, there's so many. I mean, they're just opened up a new one. Did you hear about that? The Flying Aces
No.
Brewery. It's like a gargantuan facility.
Oh, yeah.
I heard they dropped a lot of money into it.
Nice.
They might also distill things on site.
Okay.
So it's
Where's
there's a
where's
lot of
that
things
one?
going on.
It's in Leesburg.
It's in Leesburg?
Yeah,
It's a little west.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I
Kind of
think
near
it's
Harper's Ferry a little bit.
yeah.
Not quite that far, but out that way.
What did Wes say again? From Dirt Farm, he said it's in between Harper's Ferry and Vanish.
And Vanish? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Probably like a
there.
20-minute drive from me, something like that, 20, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And Wheatland Spring is also very good. It's very good.
Yeah, they
you
make
should
very
definitely
good
check
beer.
it out.
Yeah.
We actually interviewed Sebastian from what was it? Sebastian Epiphany Craft Malts.
Yeah.
And he actually provided some malt from them, so I had to go out there and buy a couple 4-packs from them. Yeah, I like
Wasn't
their
it
beers.
the ancient grain?
I don't know if it was the ancient grain I think it was him that provided the ancient grains for that one. I think you're right. Yeah. That was the one I tried. It was good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many good ones, you know. I mean, I'm not doing people, any favors by leaving them out, but there's a lot of good beer in the area.
Yeah.
Know.
I really like Rocket Frog. I also like Dynasty.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
Yeah, Rocket Frog, their brown ale knocks it out of the park, man.
Yeah, it's really good.
It's very good.
Yeah.
He won a medal
and
for it
Ocelot,
too, right?
Twice.
Yeah.
2 medals, and Ocelot.
You gotta check that out.
Ocelot's really good.
It's good beer.
I mean, I was just thinking about Leesburg area, but yeah, if you go further, like our neighbors, Ocelot obviously, IPA is really, really good, and the dark beers and their barley wines, big beers if you're into that stuff.
Absolutely,
absolutely very good.
That's what the beard's about.
They had a Scotch ale, I think like a year ago that knocked my socks off.
Yeah. Cool.
But yeah, we haven't even really started exploring the breweries in this area, but yeah, I'm sure we'll be reaching out and doing some interviews. So yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm in Leesburg too, so if you want to grab a beer at some point,
cool.
Let me know.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
Man, hopefully this virus situation resolves itself soon enough so we can start doing some in-person interviews and stuff.
Yeah.
Especially with all these folks that are local.
Yeah.
So cool, man. Well, how'd you guys get into this? Like, you're both, relatively young, look to be about our age, but you have degrees in some form of biology and way overqualified to be on this show. So were you guys always interested in science, or like, how did you, like, what piqued your interest, I guess, originally?
I mean, well, I was always interested in biology, and when I went to, obviously you can hear I'm from Europe, from the Netherlands, through my accent. I really liked microbiology a lot, so I studied microbiology for a while. Didn't do anything with yeast. I studied something totally different, but that always was always in the back of my mind. And when I came to the US in 2007, I joined a research lab and did a lot of protein engineering, and I kind of wanted to go back into microbiology, but I also like beer a lot. And I was really blown away when I came. I remember coming to the US, and this was 2007, right? So craft brewing movement was like well on the way here. And at the time in Europe, the whole idea about craft beer from the US, or like beer from the US, was just like non-existent. And I was like, man, this is really good. And I brought all this beer back from my brothers, and they were super excited about IPAs. And they were like, oh, this is fantastic. What the heck is this, So, and then I started collaborating with Fabio Garcia, who at the time was at Lost Rhino Brewing Company. But I really was seeing this niche, and there's so much you can do with yeast, and it was kind of underserved, So I joined his brewery and set up a small lab to do, lab stuff for him. But at the same time, was starting this yeast company, just to do microbiology, yeast work, and yeast is a very interesting organism. And that's kind of how it all got going. And I mean, at some point we had to find our own spot, so we did that. And then Ben, who actually worked at the same institution I worked at, after I left, he was there for a while. He can talk about that himself. That's and then that's how it all came together. So I don't know if you want to say something about your track, Ben.
Yeah, I mean, I was always interested in science, and like he said, I worked at this Howard Hughes Medical Institute in Ashburn. They have a location there. It's a beautiful campus, and I worked there for a little over a year, like a year and a half, and as a research technician. But like that was around the time where I was like really getting into home brewing and like getting really knee deep into that with one of my buddies. Like my best friend and I, just whenever I brew, I'm basically brewing with him. So, and it just turned out like there was only like 2 homebrew shops in the area at the time, which was Kettles and Grains and Brew Loco. Brew Loco actually, unfortunately, has gone out of business because of COVID and everything. But like I used to go there religiously to pick up ingredients, yeast, whatever, and I saw Jasper's Yeast like there all the time, and I actually used it all the time. Like that was the one I would go to, and it just turned out like, I started working at Brew Loco eventually after I was in between jobs from Genelia or from a HHMI, Howard Hughes Medical Institute, to here. So like I just like at that time I was seeing him come in, drop it off yeast and stuff, and I was like, maybe I could get a job with him at some point because like I have a degree in this, like I'm very interested, and eventually I just shot some emails to Jasper and he brought me in eventually, like when they were ready. So that was good.
That was a long time ago, right? Like,
it was, yeah. Like it's weird to think
Loco.
about it, yeah.
That's awesome.
You were doing a lot of kombucha then too, right?
Yeah, I was really into making kombucha at the time, yeah. Which I need to get back into. My gut would like that.
Yeah. Especially during COVID, right?
Yeah.
So it sounds like, that's awesome stories. You guys are doing stuff that you love. First off, I'm a little envious of you guys for that. And, Jasper, it sounds like you found this void or this area that you saw an opportunity and just said, you know what, I have an expertise. Let me go help these guys out and see what I can make happen. And you've definitely done that. And that's awesome. And Ben, same with you. You've kind of just out of the passion of home brewing, just, saw an opportunity to really get involved with a company that's, kind of like the basis of beer, yeast, right? And you took that opportunity. So that's really cool. Really awesome. I feel like I'd be doing a disservice if I didn't ask what yeast is from your perspective, because as far as I can tell, it's bacteria, it eats sugar, and it creates alcohol. Beyond that, I'm such a noob, I have no idea. So I'm just wondering if I could get like a high level, or not a high level, like a more detailed explanation of what we're looking at when we talk about yeast.
Well, I mean, it's not a bacteria. That's point number one. It's a eukaryote. So like classically, if you would look at a tree of life, there's like all life on planet Earth, you can divide in 3 groups. You have the bacteria, you have the archaea, which is like an ancient kind of organism, and the newer trees or newer research has indicated that the eukaryotes and the archaea are kind of like related. Eukaryotes would be like a clade of that. And then you have the eukaryotes, which is plants, animals, fish, you name it, but also, eukaryotic microorganisms such as yeast. And yeast is a fungus, single-celled fungus. And well, that's in a nutshell what yeast is. And yeast really likes, like the name already indicates, to metabolize sugars. And yeast is a very interesting organism because some of the different kinds of yeast, when they do so, can produce a lot of alcohol and like almost toxic level amounts of alcohol. Like champagne yeast very famously can go to almost 20% alcohol, which is an incredible amount. And it's not 100% understood why this is. There are some ideas or some theories and some hypotheses why yeast can do this. I mean, obviously it will create energy, but why such high amounts? That's just slightly unknown. But humans have used this in their to create alcohol from fruit, but also from mashing sprouted barley and other grains, using the enzymes then to convert starches and then ferment that. And then the Saccharomyces yeast that a lot of people use in brewing is very much capable of taking the main sugar from the that is present then after the starch breakdown and turn that into alcohol. And that's why the barley and the yeast kind of came together there. And I would say hops started to play a role. I mean, I'm not 100% sure, but probably 1600s, 1700s. That's when that started to get used. And before that, they were already doing a lot of fermentation, but they used other kind of herbs and spices. And that's like, modern beer, it's like, and you compare it to beer 500 years ago, 400 years ago, would be obviously very different. But that yeast played that essential role of taking the sugars and then very quickly, efficiently turning those into alcohol and pleasant flavors. It's nice to smell fermentation. Not always, but like most of the time, it's like has this very pleasant character. These esters are produced that fruity aromas, kind of like a breadiness. It's nice. So. And it's like a fermented product, so it's naturally, obviously, it doesn't spoil as fast, and that helps too. So that was one way to make sure that what you were drinking was healthy. Was just drinking low ABV beer, as a child, because you knew that was, you're not gonna get sick of that. So that's how things got going, and now it's like, and here we are. That's basically the role yeast played in all of that.
So what we just learned was I should start giving my 5-year-old Miller Lite.
That's it was probably a little less. It depends where you live in the country, I should say, because if you can't drink the water, maybe Miller Lite will be better.
Yeah. No.
So
that's crazy.
Obviously that's a joke, but yeah. I mean, that's how that went. They call it in Dutch scharrebier, and it was probably like 1.5% or 2%. It was just something probably fermented like for 1 week, 2 weeks or something, just to keep the kids happy, to keep the kids calm.
Before they had television.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Get Johnny drunk, send him outside.
I've always wondered how they kept kids so calm before internet. That's fascinating, man. I think Reese and I we've completed the, I don't know what the word is, but
the quadfecta, water.
I was going to say trifecta,
malt,
but actually no. I guess it has been a trifecta.
I'm sorry, yeast.
I haven't talked to anyone that's water focused, but
that's true.
We've talked to hop farmers and as we mentioned, Sebastian from Epiphany, malt producers or suppliers, and obviously brewers, and now finally speaking to folks who cultivate yeast. So I think yeast, in my opinion, is kind of like the most underappreciated ingredient in beer. Like if you don't know what you're talking about, like, right. And I'm including myself, like from the beginning of being interested in craft beer, it's like obviously the hops is what everyone talks about. Then the malts, so you start to get familiar with malts and what that flavor does. But yeast obviously has a large impact on the flavor of beer as well. But I feel like people aren't as aware of that as maybe they should be.
It's the core of it, right? You can have the other 3 ingredients, but it's not a beer until you add the yeast. So I was surprised to hear that it's a fungus. I had no idea. So like, I'm gonna probably sound dumb asking this. Like, does it give off spores? Like, how does it reproduce?
Well, beer yeast doesn't do that anymore. But there is a mechanism that like a wild Saccharomyces cerevisiae could still do this. Yeah. But then it's I always compare to tomatoes, although beefsteak tomatoes probably still you can use those seeds. But there's like all kinds of weird stuff going on with the yeast genome, duplications and stuff like that. So the cells become larger, like a beefsteak tomato, becomes also huge. And with that, and all kinds of weird, reorganizations, with that comes the fact that the yeast can not sporulate anymore. Or most of the time it can't. But yeast can also divide by budding. So it has 2 ways. It can have sex, so to speak, and it can also asexually reproduce. So that's what a brewer actually, only thing that a brewer does. Yeah. And that's right what you said about all the ingredients, and like we always say that a brewer makes wort and yeast makes the beer, you know.
Yeah.
And that's not completely true, obviously. I mean, there's like people working in the cellar, controlling all the fermentations and stuff like that. But it is a little bit true that, you know, the brewer is just, you know, beer jockeying it that one day, and then the yeast will take that and turn all that stuff into something specific.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. Yeah.
So that kind of helps us understand. We've heard stories about having like the same strain of yeast or same batch of yeast used for it was like tens to hundreds of years, I think, in some Trappist monasteries, if I remember. I don't remember who was telling us that, but
yeah.
So that's why, is because you can actually get it to stop reproducing and it won't spoil, and it can just keep living and producing alcohol for you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And there's like a famous story is that during World War II, obviously in Belgium the beer industry was destroyed. There's nothing left, you know. So Jean de Klerk, a very famous scientist, wrote a very famous book on brewing science that is still relevant today. It's now like 70 years old, roughly 70 years old. And he went to the UK, which was still, you know, free, got strains of yeast there and brought them back to Belgium to kickstart the Belgian beer production. You can imagine how different it must have been, right? After, not just because of the war, but imagine it's all British yeasts. And the story is, and I mean, I haven't heard this firsthand, but that the Duvel Moordgat brewery, which makes Duvel, you know, this high effervescent Belgian beer, you know, very dry. That yeast is the same strain as the McEwan's Scottish Ale strain.
Oh.
And yeah, and then just over generations things change. So you can, if you repitch, reuse, it's like looking at a picture of a bulldog from, I don't know when they started doing the breed, but say 100 years ago. It's like this very strong, agile dog, and now it's just morphed into this other creature, so to speak. So the same thing happens with yeast, you know, and with anything else. So things just adapt and change, and it's just how it goes. Nothing really stands still in time. We can do that nowadays with like laboratory techniques and ultra cold storage and freezing, and that's what we do. You know, that's why big breweries can have the same strain all the time, because they go back after, say, 10 generations, 10 fermentations. But in the old days, that's just not how it was. Yeah, so some strains have been in use for literally hundreds of thousands of generations. Yeah.
It's mind blowing.
Yeah, and it's interesting because right now they're sequencing all this stuff, because sequencing is becoming so cheap, or so affordable, I should say, that you can start to see the trees through the forest. You know, you can say, okay, this is a family of here, this goes there. Obviously, it's like more of a net, you know, because there's a lot of stuff going on, but you can really tell, like, okay, we thought this was this, it's not, or these two are related, and blah, 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 this must have come from here, and that's really interesting from a scientific perspective.
Tracing it back to like an origin point, potentially.
Yeah, potentially, you know, the more you know, the more those things will become clear.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same with basically what people are doing with 23andMe, but then it's for yeast, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, I kind of I want to get into like what you guys do on a day-to-day basis in a second, but now that we're talking about that, I'm curious, when you mention being able to trace that back, is it possible to like almost reverse engineer a strain of yeast? So like if you've got a brewer who comes to you and it's like, hey man, I want to produce something very similar to this, can you guys then like look at it in the lab and figure out, you know, what kind of yeast is used to produce those flavors and things like that to help them kind of achieve a similar end result?
You wanna take this one, Ben, or?
Sure. I guess yes and no, because I mean you can't go backwards in time of like the genome, right? So you wouldn't be able to like do that. But what we could do is like kind of test a bunch of strains of yeast that we know would probably be in the ballpark, right? And do test fermentations with them and kind of see like with all the same ingredients, right? The same mash, the same everything, like the same beer wort that will then be eaten up by those, let's say, 5 different strains of yeast. And you can kind of do like a taste analysis of all of those and kind of see where they're at with that. That's what my best guess would be, to kind of reverse engineer that.
Are there any other metrics, like any other non-taste metrics that you can use, like any measurements that would help?
Yeah, like pH, and the attenuation. So that's a term defining like how much of the sugar was fermented. So you can kind of see like for that same example, across 5 different strains, you'd probably see a variety of attenuation between 5 different strains of the same exact wort, which is very interesting.
Yeah. What they're doing nowadays as well is like this has been in science already going on for a while. Is where you can make a fingerprint of all the genes that are present, like in a specific genome. So you know what's there, but then you can also see when things are turned on and off, and you can make a snapshot of that. And then there's like certain techniques where you do that, and then you can see, okay, all these genes are on, these are off. And then what you can also do is what people are doing is a very detailed analysis of all the, I would say, volatile products that are produced by the yeast. So you get like a fingerprint on that part as well. And this is obviously costs a lot of money, right? That's the thing. It's just very pricey. But you start to become, we're slowly, edging into the area where these things are becoming more and more affordable. And at some point in the near future, all these things are going to be, available to people. That, like you said, like you take a beer, you bring it somewhere and say, I want analysis blah done, and they will do that and say, okay, this is everything that's in there. These are the concentrations, obviously to a degree, and then okay, I'll go to this yeast lab and they say, okay, yeah, under this, like all these product, blah 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 blah. If you do this and this and that with these algorithms, this machine learning knows blah blah blah, this that. Here we go, do this. I mean, that's gonna happen at some point.
Yeah.
We're already going there. I remember starting in science a long time ago. I mean, none of this was available. It was there, but it was really, like the really wealthy facilities could do this, and it was like one paper where they put everything in. But now, it's just crazy what they're doing. It's like how fast science is moving forward, and also how, this becomes like edges into the realm of regular people, so to speak, or smaller, labs like us. Obviously, we're not like an enormous facility with an enormous amount of money. It just makes sense. But it starts to, come to the horizon for sure.
Yeah, especially with access to fast information, with the internet, I'm assuming, with so much more craft beer out there, there's probably more people like yourself that are diving into the science behind it. I'm curious, are there,
sure.
You mentioned that there was probably only like one paper on it before. I'm assuming there's probably journals that have been written that dive into the science of yeast at this point.
Oh, I mean, yeah, for sure. I mean, there's tons of work being done, There was, I mean, I'm not saying there wasn't tons of work being done, but what I meant is like, if you want to do a genetic analysis of something, I mean, I remember it was really expensive and it was very, very time consuming to do. And now it's just like in no time, it's like incredible how fast that development has gotten. So I remember the human genome sequencing, that was such a big deal. I mean, I was like, everybody was talking about it. Unbelievable, they got it done. And now it's like, I saw a video of a guy, he was sequencing the shark DNA on like a device. It was basically the size of a phone, maybe a little bit larger, in his like, shopping bag on his handlebars of his bike, and he was sequencing it when he was going home, and it was basically the amount he could sequence on the device in a few hours was like 40 human genomes at once. it's just insane. And that's only like how many years? It's like
Yeah.
15 years, 17 years. Yeah, I mean, it's just, that's how
I
fast
mean,
things will go. So who knows where we will be in 20 years from now? Yeah,
mhm.
so
Yeah, at this rate, definitely.
yeah.
The faster, smaller computers.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, when I was at VCU, getting my undergraduate degree, one of the labs I worked at, the neighboring lab had a DNA sequence machine in there, and it was like the size of an entire room. It was ginormous. Like that thing was probably like $3 million. It was crazy, and now they can do that on a little tablet thing. Jasper's talking about like this is crazy.
Yeah.
It's so crazy.
Yeah.
We were actually just talking about a 32 core processor that Apple was flaunting the other day. I know we're going off topic. I'm going to bring us right back real quick, but just on that note, it's like 32 cores in a processor. Like, what's next? How big are they going to go? Yeah. So
Where's the flying car, man? Where's this flying car?
We've been waiting for it for years.
They probably have it. They've got it.
Come on, Elon Musk.
Yeah. They just flew a helicopter on Mars. I mean, we're close, right?
That's true.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
That's incredible.
That's pretty intense to watch.
Yeah, that was awesome. So, okay. Or, go ahead, AJ. You take it.
Yeah, no, I kind of wanted to go a little bit back to when you're talking about keeping a snapshot of a particular yeast, because I'm like trying to picture in my head. Again, we are not even on the same level when it comes to like how this stuff actually works. How do you, like, on a day-to-day basis maintain like a strain of yeast that someone has asked you guys to, keep a snapshot of for them so that they can come back to you and get the same thing? I'm thinking about like, who's a brewery that releases the same beer like every year? I'm thinking of like Hardywood's,
Right. Yeah.
Sure.
gingerbread stout or something. So like each year they want to come out and put the gingerbread stout out. How do they know that they're getting the same product every single year? Or is it even possible?
Well, that's a true, like the real craft of a brewer is working with different ingredients all the time and making the same beer. Because obviously, I mean, actually, in that regard, the yeast nowadays is one of the easier things because we can take a snapshot, we can freeze a strain ultra cold, and it's the same. And we can like take a little bit of that, literally take a little bit, grow that up, and then go back later and take a little bit again.
Yeah.
And in that ultra cold storage, time stands still, basically. But imagine if you're a brewer, right, and you brew this gingerbread stout, and let's forget about ginger and gingerbread for now and all the barrels stuff they do. Just the grain itself, they buy from. It's a new harvest, a new year. It's totally different. The maltster has to do all kinds of crazy things to make that malt kind of the same. And the hops, like the brewer gets the hops in, has to look at the alpha acid content, has to do the calculations. How much am I going to add this time? That's this bitterness. Do I have to supplement with another hop, to make sure that the aromatics are kind of lining up? It's like, it's an incredible amount of work. And as a, consumer, you get the beer and you're like, oh yeah. Maybe I like last year's a little better. I don't know. Yeah. But I mean, like getting that same thing from all these different natural ingredients, it's very difficult. Yeah. So I mean, that's a true craft, if somebody can do that, and brewers can. So yeah.
And if they're not Budweiser.
Well, no, they do it probably the most.
They do it perfectly well.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're obviously very good at it. I mean, and I talked to the head brewer of all the Budweiser facilities, and they could taste like a Budweiser from every plant, and they could tell like, oh, this from here, this from there. I mean, it's just unbelievable.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah. These guys know. They know beer very well, and actually the big craft breweries, they took a lot of people from AB and from Miller Coors, and they kind of like went into the craft brewing industry because these guys knew their business, they knew their stuff, So
Yeah,
there's a lot of knowledge there for sure in those big, big places.
Yeah, big business there. My uncle used to drink Budweiser every day, and if you bought him a Budweiser out of a can, he wouldn't drink it. It had to be out of a bottle because he couldn't stand that aluminum taste. And we blindfolded him one day and did a test and said, "There's no way you actually know the difference," but he did. He did know the difference.
Well, haven't they changed that now? I think the canning industry...
The lining, you mean?
Yeah, there's like a new liner in them now that like kind of helps nix that. Like it gets rid of that, like whatever happens with the metal exposure to the beer,
Well, that's good to hear. Yeah, nobody wants extra metal in their beer.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was like 10 years ago when we did that, so who knows?
Yeah.
We could do the test again. Maybe we'll get them this time. All right. So, do you guys service anybody outside of the beer industry? Is there any other like use cases for beer yeast, I guess?
You mean like a non something totally different, like bread, or you mean like a cider or something like that?
Well, I know you guys do cider and the seltzer, right? I saw that on the website. So, yeah, I guess that. Yeah, definitely that.
Well, I mean, it was interesting because when the pandemic hit, people were literally driving around and like calling breweries for yeast because you couldn't get any yeast in the supermarket. So we got a couple calls and I was kind of disappointed because I went to the lab. I was like, "Oh, I'll meet you there, and you don't need to pay for this." This guy sounded very stressed about not having yeast to make bread, and then he never showed up. I was very disappointed. But normally we don't really do that because it's not very cost effective. Because the difference between beer yeast and bread yeast is bread yeast doesn't need to be very pure because you're gonna throw it in the oven anyways, and it's just that's it. But for beer yeast, the smallest inconsistency of impurity you can immediately taste. And for bread, that's not really the case,
Yeah.
So
using
it's a totally different
completely
beast.
different reasons, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Theirs is purely for the CO2.
Yeah, basically expansion, rise the bread, and a little bit of flavor, for sure. But yeah.
Yeah. Actually, now that we said the expansion, I know we're kind of bouncing around here, but I've been seeing a ton. I know I'm sure you guys are part of these pages too on like Facebook, where it's like craft brewing fans and stuff like this. One of the huge things I keep seeing now is exploding beers, sours in particular. Fruit sours, where people I don't know what causes it, but I guess if it's not stored at the right temperature, beers are literally exploding on people. Is that in relation to like yeast or how the fruit is fermented?
It certainly can be. I actually, like 2 weeks ago, picked up a 4-pack from Total Wine. I complained to Jasper about it. I was like, dude, I bought this 4-pack, and like me and my girlfriend, we opened one, and they both exploded. I was like, dang. But Total Wine's good. You can like go back and they'll give you a refund and everything. So I got a 12-pack of Dale's Pale Ale just because I knew that wouldn't happen with that for like the same cost. I was like, cool. But so that can happen from either just there's more sugar in there, but like it hasn't finished out yet, like fermenting, and then they canned it, they packaged it, and the yeast is still eating everything up, and then boom, eventually, and then like in Saison strains, they typically are positive for a certain gene called STA1. It's a diastatic strain. So basically what that means is in a traditional beer, traditional yeast, not Saison yeast, it will, let's say it eats 90% of the sugar. So there's 10% of the sugar left behind. That's just unfermentable. In a diastatic strain, it'll just eat all of it. And so it'll just keep going until there's no sugar at all. And basically it's kind of the same example as the previous one, but it's because it has this gene, so it's keep, and it takes a little longer, I guess, than if there was just more fermentable sugar left behind. So it just will eventually explode. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah,
So really,
it's because of people. Yeah, I mean, like especially with the sours, it's because people put too much fruit in it,
yeah,
and you can't do that.
yeah,
Yeah, because fructose is a very simple sugar.
Yeah.
And yeast loves simple sugar. So it'll just go. Yeah.
Is there a way to breed yeast so that it's able to, I guess, digest more of the complex sugars? Like maltier, not maltier, but more like the sugars that are left over after like a dark roast of malt. Is there a way to like buff up the yeast to eat those stronger sugars, or is that just out of the question?
No, I mean, how much time do you have? No, literally, I mean, you can obviously, if you have a strain of yeast, then you'll keep growing that and repitching and growing. Yeah, at some point, if you the selection, if you put the selection pressure on there, at some point there will be a strain. It will do that. I mean, when you say breeding, it can mean lots of different things. A lot of yeasts already have all the machinery to do it. They just don't always turn it on, or you might run into a strain that just turns it on very hard, where it's not really down regulated. That can do that then. It'll take time. Think about the example, the McEwen's to Duvel example. So that obviously took decades, but yeah, I mean, I would assume that's obviously in the possible. If you say, can yeast produce gold? No, it's not going to do that.
Dang it.
But
next question.
If you figure that out.
Yeah.
So that kind of leads me into another question, because like I've seen beers that go above like 50% alcohol limits or higher, which I think were like illegal for like a long time, and then they've just started becoming, well, not started. I guess time flies. It was a while ago.
50%?
Yeah.
50?
Yeah.
Or higher.
I've seen that too.
Yeah. And I'm just like, is that the yeast that's doing that? Like, how is it possible?
Well, it might be that they use a process like a freeze distillation, maybe. Like how they make ice bock.
Yeah,
Have you
like
heard of
natty
ice
ice.
Natty ice. What you do is like you freeze the beer and then you take the ice out, and then obviously it becomes more concentrated.
Because alcohol does not freeze at the same temperature as water. So
yeah.
Oh, okay.
So you're just removing the water, basically.
Yeah, basically, and so you get a very concentrated solution, and that's probably how they did it. I mean, like if you think about it, if you can probably get with feeding and like weird. You can get to 25%. It's going to be difficult. You get there, and then you have to do this freeze distillation stuff.
Okay.
You get there.
You have to get creative and bend the rules.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
My brother has some fun stories about a very similar process he adopted with bottles of wine. And he and his friends got very, very unrecognizably trashed. But
it works too,
experimentation.
It's in the name of science.
In the name of science, exactly. It's funny thinking back to when we were kids. We used to do stupid experiments like that all the time. Like, what happens if you, I don't know, chew up a bunch of Skittles and like put them in some Coca-Cola? I don't know, just like random stuff. And now he's still doing that as an adult. But yeah, I mean, of course, I'm blanking on the name of the brewery that does the 120-minute IPA.
Dogfish
Head. Yeah, theirs is like, when you look up what's the ABV, it's like, I don't know, maybe between 15 and 20%. We're not sure. Just depends on, which year it is. But, that's probably the highest one I've ever had personally, is the 120-minute.
Yeah.
Did you, Ben, have you ever had a worldwide stout from them?
Yes, I have.
It's 20%, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's heavy.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't even label it ever, so it varies, like he's saying. But, yeah.
Yeah, it's a big beer.
A lot of the barley wines that I've had are kind of up there like that. The Brewery is one of the breweries that I, go to when I'm, I don't know, trying to buy something, splurge a little bit and get something extravagant, and them, or like Firestone. they have some really crazy ones that get pretty high up there, and it's just
Yeah.
share one bottle with somebody else, and you're
Yeah.
you're gonna feel pretty warm after that.
That's no fun.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. So we saw flocculation mentioned on your website, and I think you mentioned it. One of you mentioned it already once here. I was just trying to understand what that is, because I keep seeing it everywhere, but I don't know what that means.
Right.
Yeah.
You want to take this, Ben?
Sure. Yeah. So flocculation is, so I think you're confusing. So I said attenuation before. So attenuation is the fermentability. Flocculation is the yeast dropping out of suspension in the liquid. So basically at the end of fermentation, the yeast all settles to the bottom of the solution, and now you have a clear product on the top and sediment at the bottom, and that's what that's talking about.
So is that like a timeline essentially then? How fast it'll drop down?
Yes and no, because there are certain strains that kind of stay in suspension regardless of time. I mean, I guess if you give it enough time, it'll eventually settle out, but like we would be talking about a significant amount of time for that to happen.
Yeah.
So like all these like hazy IPAs are super popular right now. So they are actually looking for yeast that kind of stays in suspension and doesn't drop out to be super clear. You don't want a clear hazy. I mean, it wouldn't be hazy.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
That's also a lot of protein in there too.
Yeah,
protein
yeah.
and hop compounds. Yeah.
So
the majority. Yeah. What was that?
So is that like a good indicator of like the fermentation process being complete when it drops down? Or is that
When it
just
drops down?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, I guess so.
Okay.
I mean, can happen prematurely. If you cool down too quick, or there's other reasons why it will drop out. Certain strains are just, we grow them and you look at a flask, and it's just literally one big chunk.
Yeah.
Yeah, and other ones are just like very dusty. It looks like milk. Yeah.
Got it. So it sounds like it's when you're trying to do a hazy IPA, you want to have a lower flocculation.
Well, yes and no. I mean, because a lot of that haze is also protein. I would say is that there's a protein hop complex. There's specific hop oils, specific tannins, and you need a specific water salt level in your water. A lot of times people do this with calcium chloride. It needs to be of a specific concentration. You need a lot of oats and wheat in there because there's a lot of protein in there. And then you have to do a specific mash, and certain yeasts produce another enzyme that then is used and takes something from the hops and creates this stable compound. And that's the haze that people like. And if you do everything right, you can create literally this really a super opaque milk that is now beer. Yeah.
Without adding lactose. Yeah.
You can add lactose if you want, but that's almost more common than not, I would say.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
that has nothing to do with haze production, I would say. It's just, like a body flavor.
Yeah. What is it about lactose that yeast won't, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for?
Ferment,
yeah.
Metabolize. Certain strains will, but most of the yeast strains that people use in brewing won't. It's just a sugar that they normally wouldn't see. It's
Gotcha.
like it's present in milk, I suppose. So lactic acid bacteria can totally use it, ferment it, but not yeast, not regular yeast.
Yeah. There seems like there's so much that goes into like figuring out which strain of yeast is right for the beer. Like we've talked to brewers about like, where like they come out with so many different types of beer every single year. And it's like, how do you guys like from the inception of the idea of this new beer that you want to produce? In some cases we found it's total accidents. They like accidentally created something that they like, and then they continue to pursue that flavor. Other times they've got an idea in their head of what they want to achieve, or they've had something from a different brewery that they want to do something similar to. Like, how do they do? Is that when they come to you guys and are like, hey, we've got this idea for something? I know on your website you talk about that you offer like consultations and things like that. At what point does a brewer come to you guys for advice on how to achieve what they want to achieve with their yeast? And then how do you guys go about helping them get there?
Well, I mean, they, like you said, like they have something in mind, they tasted something, or they want to achieve, they have an end point they want to get to, you know, like this flavor, I really would like this attenuation, so much body, you know, like this is my plan. Do you have anything that fits the bill? You know, that's a question we get quite a lot. And most of the time, yes, we do. I mean, obviously, when we had one question once, it's a guy, I'm not going to say whom, and he said, I want a Belgian yeast, I want an underpitch, it needs to be a triple, it needs to be ferment really quick, and it has to have no Belgian flavor. I was like, well, that's basically that's not possible. So I mean, there are certain things that you can do, and certain things are just not possible. And right now, we're at a time right now where I think we're pushing the envelope a little bit of things that, you know, like you said yourself, like what about lactose that people are adding in? I mean, like 15 years ago, that would only go into one specific beer style, milk stout. And you couldn't find it anywhere else. And now it's like very normal to have an IPA with lactose, vanilla, and all kinds of other stuff in it. So I mean, at some point, you become like maybe it's not really about the fermentation and yeast and all that stuff. It's like what are you putting in, and then it becomes obviously we're not doing that really. We're just providing yeast, but yeah, that's just like one way people are trying to achieve these beverages that are, borderline beer, I would say.
Malt beverage.
And it's interesting because I talked to a guy who worked at Miller at a conference, a beer conference, and this is years ago. And he said to me, he said, like, craft brewers are always complaining about what we are doing. He said, you pay attention. You guys are gonna make all this stuff like just the same as we are doing, and look what we're doing now, like seltzer. It's like basically Bud Light Lime. If somebody would make a Bud Light Lime beer, it would be totally acceptable if they would call it like something else. You know?
Exactly.
Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious lime, and then it would sell.
I mean, it's like definitely people are kind of running out of ideas. Sometimes I have the feeling, I don't know if this is really true, but it becomes, I wonder what will be next. That's really, nobody really can answer this. Like when the New England IPA came, that was really groundbreaking. Everything shifted. What's next? I don't think anybody really knows. Everybody always says lager is next. I mean, lager has always been kind of there. It's definitely getting more popular.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's really the new big thing.
The Gozas really seem to be a big thing this past year. I feel like I saw a lot over like the past 2 years, Gozas and a lot more sours. You see a lot of people doing sours, all the
fruited sours.
Yeah, fruited sours, farmhouse ales, stuff like that. On the topic of seltzers, though, we saw anti-gravity warp feed on your website, which sounds very, very fun, I would say.
I'm pretty sure you guys made that term up.
Yeah. Yeah. That's definitely Jasper.
That's scientific.
Nobody likes to do seltzer. Brewers hate to do seltzers. They're like, I didn't start to become a brewer. I didn't want to become a brewer to make this, right? But
they're like, what is this?
Yeah, but that's where things are going. So, I mean, Ben really took a lot of time and put a lot of effort in like developing this blend that we are using right now. This yeast blend of a couple strains
and
a nutrient blend. Yeah. We did over 200 different fermentations to really hone that down because it sounds very simple, right? Sugar, water, and it becomes like a flavorless alcohol solution. Well, it's actually very difficult because when you make beer, you actually want those flavors that are in there in the beginning often to stay there, because they contribute to the end product. For seltzer, you don't want anything to be in there, so you have to make it in a way that it kind of is there but disappears. And how can you do that? And fast, and like have a fast dropping yeast, all that stuff. So it was a very difficult challenge, but yeah, it's and then the name, is obviously we thought to ourselves, we have to come up with something fun that the brewer at least has a little bit of fun when he sees the name.
Yeah.
Telling people about it is
it's
fun.
relevant. Sorry, go ahead.
No, sorry, you go ahead.
It's relevant because we say specific, or like gravity is like a measurement of the sugar content of the solution. So it's like a play on like fermenting it all the way out. So it's like anti-gravity, like we're trying to ferment everything out till there's nothing.
Right. And you're feeding the yeast, right? So they talk about feeding the yeast. So that's where the warp feed comes from.
Yeah. See, I was just joking. I thought that you guys didn't make that term up. I was just trying to be funny because it sounded too cool to be real. But it actually was good marketing on you guys' part.
Too cool to be real. That's a good one.
There you go.
Anti-gravity warp feed.
New slogan.
Too cool to be real.
There you go. I wake up spitting out genius, guys. I don't know what to tell you.
That's awesome.
That's hilarious that you say that, though, because I remember talking to Jimmy from Smart Mouth, and I specifically mentioned, I was like, my wife doesn't like beer, but she's huge into cider, and Smart Mouth didn't have any cider when we went to their Virginia Beach tap room, and so she got their seltzer, and when we were talking to Jimmy, I mentioned that, and he was just like, he just made this face. He was just like, he's like, did she like it? Like, he's like, I don't even like that. And I just thought it was kind of funny.
None of them are passionate about it at all.
Yeah.
They're just like, I have to make this because it sells.
Yeah,
exactly.
So,
and, sorry.
Is it they don't like it because of the taste or because of how hard it is to make? Probably both.
No, it's like what Jasper said. They got in the industry to brew beer. They're passionate about beer.
Yeah.
They don't want this,
Beer, bubbly water.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
They're like, what is this?
Yeah.
I remember we talked to Andy at St. George Beer in Hampton, and he was very adamant. He was like, listen, if it has anything in it except for the 4 main ingredients, I don't want anything to do with it. So it's interesting that you say that about, now we've got like milkshake IPAs and spicy lagers and
flaming hot Cheeto beer.
I mean, I know people said exactly the same thing, but then it's like, and that brewery did close, I guess it kind of reopened, but I mean, it's like, it might be a tough hill to die on, because I don't know, it's just what happens, unfortunately. And like, if you're in the industry for a little bit, I mean, you get these really grouchy brewers who are like, this is not beer. This has nothing to do with beer. And then maybe they have they are right in some shape or form, but it's like talking about music too, like.
Oh yeah, for sure.
At some point, you start to sound like an old man, screaming at like an empty chair. I don't know.
Yeah. There's a market for both. You have your people that do traditional very well, and then you have your experimentals. I mean, everybody's gonna want to. There's gonna be a market for both.
I think St. George has other brewers there at the facility that do the more experimental stuff, and he's like, they can do that. I'm gonna stick to my. And he had a very traditional background too, having lived in Germany and stuff like that. So. Yeah, you're right. I mean, you've got to stay competitive, and people, it's almost like beer has become, it's like food. When Instagram first came out, it's like everyone took a picture of what they're eating. Now I do it because we run a podcast about beer and I post it on our Instagram, but just the modern consumer, it's like common practice to take a picture of what you're drinking. And so the beer label has to be flashy. It has to be all these colors and amazing designs. And if it's not, then it's a good chance it's not getting picked up off the shelf. And it's definitely not going to get posted on Instagram. So, you've got to stay relevant.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to add to that fear of missing out factor.
Exactly.
Oh God.
Got to have a
That's true.
strong FOMO sense.
Yeah.
So I know we're like right at the top of the hour. So I just got one quick, I guess kind of fun question, and then we can probably wrap it up. So I know AJ typically likes hops. He likes his IPAs and whatnot, and I usually like a darker, maltier option, stouts, porters sometimes. Do you guys have a favorite yeast strain that you prefer, or style of beer?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, do you want to take this? Why don't you start? Because I know you like specific kind of beers,
Yeah.
right?
I really like Belgian beers a lot. My favorite beer that I've ever had, and if I were to drink one beer for the rest of my life, it would be Triple Carmelite. I think that's how you pronounce it. I don't know. Maybe Jasper can pronounce it better
Triple
than I can.
Carmelite.
Yeah, but it's a very well done Triple, and whatever their yeast is, it's definitely a house yeast. They've been doing it since like the 1600s. So whatever they got, it is solid. It's good. So I like that beer a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Are we able to? Is that something that you can get over here, or do you have to travel abroad?
I've been able to find it at Total Wine, but it's hit or miss whether it's actually in stock or not. But you can find it here. It was weird. We went to Philadelphia,
Yeah.
and like Belgian beers were like everywhere up there.
Yeah.
And we went to this bar once, and like they had that beer on tap. I was like, what? I've never seen this beer on tap. I have to get it like now.
Yeah.
So
I've never seen it on draft in the Netherlands or in Belgium.
yeah, it's crazy. It was crazy that we saw it on draft.
Yeah.
But
wow, you would think Delirium up the street here would have something like that.
It's on Total Wine's website.
Yeah.
It's $19 for a 4-pack.
Yes, it's
not
expensive. But it's my favorite.
Cool. Triple
Celebrate
Carmelite.
once a year or something,
Mm-hmm.
It's good beer. Yeah.
Nice. Jasper, how about you?
For me, it's like I don't really have a favorite style, I would say. Although I'm probably not really drinking like super high octane beers that much. Although I would say there's 3 times, well, maybe 4 times that I really remember, that, like a very memorable beer. Like one time it was at Heavy Seas Ale House in Baltimore, and they had a cask. They had 2 casks. One was a stout, a British stout, a British Imperial Stout, and the other one was a British barley wine, and they were phenomenal. They were very well known for their casks and stuff like that. But it was so good. It was unreal. I remember like, wow, this is really, this is like as best as it gets for that style. Then I remember I was in Belgium and I had one of the Trappist breweries is called Achel, Achel, Achel. I guess you would pronounce it in English. And they have a blonde, which is really good. It's hard to find here. I would say it's my favorite Trappist brewery. It's really, really nice. And that's my favorite beer from them. It's really, really good. And then I went to, I had like I went to the Czech Republic one time. This sounds like, I went here, went there, like all these travels. But I had like a Pilsner there, and it was just so fresh. It was unreal. And then like my last one I wanted to say is like I had fresh Heineken beer. And no, everybody's like Heineken is trash. But it was so fresh. It was like a tinge of sweetness, a very nice hop character to it, because it was fresh, probably. Oh my god! And I was hungover when I was drinking it, and I was like, even now I really like it. It was so good. It was unbelievable. Yeah, it was really good. So I think there's like a time and place for every beer.
Yeah, I agree.
Absolutely.
And like some beers just stand to the like a Belgian beer, like a Triple Carmelite. When it gets here, it only gets better in a way. You know what I mean? Because it's like lasts so nice and long in the bottle. You can age it and all that stuff.
Yeah, because they bottle condition it and everything, so it's like it just gets better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then certain beers, like certain hazy IPAs or hoppy beers or very fragile beers, I should say, they just, they don't have that luxury. So you
Yeah.
really have to seek it out. And then, and I think there are so many good examples nowadays of good stuff. But if you have it like from a shelf somewhere else, it might not be that good anymore. So that's the hardest part, but that's how beer basically should be. In my opinion, that's how it used to be. A very long time ago, and we're kind of getting to that again. You have to go like beer becomes more and more regional, which
Yeah.
is kind of a neat thing.
Mhm.
Like when we were at Wheatland Spring, we had their beers. It was nice to talk to John Branding, the owner there, and Austin, the brewer, to talk about when they were talking about their process. It was really neat because like to see that again, that's
Yeah.
that's just exciting, and then you can taste that too. Yeah. I mean, I like that.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, that's
yeah,
the one thing I've realized. The more I learn about craft beer and understand it, the harder it becomes as a consumer, because now I don't just go to Total Wine and pick the first 6 IPAs I see off the shelf. I'm like looking at the bottom of the can to see the can date.
oh,
And
Yeah.
I'm like,
Oh, that's important.
holy shit, this was canned in September of 2020. I'm like, this is
Yeah.
not okay. For an IPA, right? Like, this is not okay. And I've tasted the difference. I won't name the brewery because it's a local brewery, but where I've had the IPA, and this is my fault. I purchased the IPA when it's relatively fresh, then kept one in the cooler for a couple months, and then had it later. And I'm like, this tastes completely different than it did the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's lost all of its character. And now I pay so much attention to that when I buy beer, and I'm in Total Wine like 20 extra minutes just to make sure I find some like relatively fresh stuff.
Mhm.
But that way I'm getting the best selection, I guess.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to put in the extra effort. You have to grab the apple and like squeeze it, look at it, and then put it in the basket. Yeah, that's how it goes.
Yeah.
So
But the folks that aren't as educated are just picking up whatever, like, oh yeah, this beer's on clearance. That's awesome. And it's like, well, why is it on
Yeah, why is it on clearance?
Yeah. There's probably a reason.
Oh, November? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's $1? Sure, throw it in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know we're trying to wrap it up here, but you mentioned, your travels and stuff, Jasper. I'm curious, while we have the opportunity, how has beer culture evolved like in Europe and the Netherlands and Belgium and Germany in comparison to the United States? Like, is it
right.
kind of parallel, or is it polar opposites?
No, I mean, I think so. When I first came here, I would say that it was like a barren wasteland, in the Netherlands. Then, right? The Netherlands was like there was not much going on. There were a couple of good breweries around, obviously, like anywhere else, but it was not as the U.S. The U.S. really started to push that envelope. Craft beer was really up and coming, and I think Europe caught up pretty quickly. And it is good and it is bad. Because I think it's bad for the countries that already had a very good beer culture, such as Belgium, the UK, and Germany, to name a few, where there's like certain traditions. And Germany has tons of little, microbreweries, right? But they do the specific styles. You can't walk into a brewery in Europe and expect, like everything from a saison to an imperial stout to anything under the sun. It's kind of like being at the supermarket, like, okay, I want some Mexican, food, or I want like this or that. It's like everything is always available. It's not like that over there. However, there's obviously breweries that started to pop up and kind of copy that. And I think they were very successful in countries that did not have a very strong beer culture left. And those were in the countries where there was basically nothing, like France. I wouldn't say there's nothing, but there's less so than Belgium, for example. Or say Italy or Greece and those kind of places. You really got those small breweries that started up, and they kind of became their own thing. So there's like a lot of like this weird wine beer hybrid styles. that became very popular in Italy, and there's like it's kind of cool because it kind of got kickstarted, inoculated because of this U.S. thing, but then it became its own thing, and that's I think very interesting to see. But if I go now to the Netherlands and I go to like a beer store there, I mean it's unbelievable the amount of breweries that are there now. It's like it's the same thing happened over there as it happened in the U.S. It's like they're popping up everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So interesting.
It's a little different styles, I would say New England is also getting popular, but a lot of Belgian stuff still, and a lot of actually a non-alcoholic beer is getting very popular there too. Even small craft places are doing that. So, yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I think that kind of wraps it up for us then. AJ, did you have anything else you wanted to talk about?
No, I don't think so. I just want to thank you guys again for joining us, and shout out to Kevin from Random Row for hooking up the connection and putting us in touch.
Yeah, man.
Thanks, Kevin.
Kevin's
a
an
good
awesome
guy,
guy, and I've got
He's awesome.
I've got a couple of Random Row in the fridge down here below my desk. So
Nice.
Rock solid, yeah.
Yeah, it's actually one. I don't remember what the name of it is, but I'm pretty sure it's a picture of him on the can. It's like an exaggerated version of his beard, and like, yeah,
Nice.
I'll have to pull it out and look at it. But yeah, we really appreciate you guys taking out the time of your night and hanging out with us for a minute and schooling us up.
Yeah,
on some
thanks for
yeast.
having us, man.
Yeah, we've learned a ton. So, I mean, I'm sure we could do a whole nother one after we go back and review and we'll probably have way more questions after this, after we can sleep on it and think about it some more. But yeah, I feel like we've hit the top 3. Water's next, but I mean, these are the important ones, and we've been waiting to learn about yeast for a while now. So yeah,
I got a guy at the Norfolk water treatment plant. I'm gonna go talk to him.
Can we just drive over there, get some take some samples,
Yeah.
taste testers.
Cool.
All right, guys. So
Cool. Yeah.
If everybody listening, if you want to learn more about Jasper Yeast, check them out at jasperyeast.com, or head on over to Instagram. You can check them out at Jasper Yeast. Thanks again, guys. Really appreciate it. Real quick, we want to give a shout out to Beards and Bottle Caps for hooking us up with some cool coasters recently. So if you guys head over to beardsandbottlecaps.com, you can get some coasters from them. They'll also do picture frames. So pretty cool.
Yeah,
all right.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Thanks so much, and we'll definitely be in touch.
Sounds good. All right. Good night.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.
Take it easy.
Good night.